The source engine has always felt off. There's something strangely unsettling about the atmosphere of the games made with it. That quiet emptiness, the way it makes you feel watched, like something is nearby. Games like Garry's Mod became infamous in recent years for this exact reason, and Team Fortress 2 is no different. Strip the game of its unique cast of characters, the jokes, the taunts, and what's left is something surprisingly disturbing. A game that feels scary even though it was never meant to be. But what if it was? What if TF2, instead of buying hats and doing goofy dances, was about dread, survival, and horror? This is Capture the Intelligence, a 2D horror game created by Nixilis, taking the iconic characters of Team Fortress 2 and dropping them into a nightmarish world, where humor meets horror. If you're a fan of my channel, you're almost certainly going to recognize this game. I originally covered it back in 2024, being one of my very first videos to blow up. But since then, the developer released its final major update that added a ton of new content. So in a way to update my last video and say my goodbyes to this project, how about we cover it one last time? The story is as follows. It was just an average night, and you want to play some Team Fortress 2 as a spy. You open the server list, only to find a single one online, Capture the Intelligence. The map is really dark, and even though the player list is empty, you somehow feel an ominous presence nearby. To make matters worse, for some strange reason you cannot leave, so there's really only one thing you can do: capture the intelligence. This is the story the game gives you the moment it boots up. A setup that feels ripped straight out of an old creepypasta from 2014. A normal game twisted into something you were never meant to experience. But the moment you press play, the fiction stops feeling like a story and instead becomes reality. We are controlling the spy. Right away, everything feels a little off. We can walk, run, call for the medic, Doctor! And nothing else. We are placed into a maze of empty hallways. There are no teammates nor enemies in sight, just distant ambience and the echo of your own footsteps cutting through the silence. Our objective is straightforward: steal the enemy intelligence and bring it back to our base 3 times. For a moment, it almost feels like a stripped down version of Team Fortress 2, like the game has been hollowed out and simplified. But then you remember that this is a horror game, because you're not alone. The Heavy is hunting you. He roams the halls, always listening. Any noise caused, like calling for the medic, grabbing the intelligence, or even scoring a point, will give away your position. If he spots you, he'll start to chase you. The only way to get him to leave you alone is to get as far away as possible without letting him see you, which might sound easy enough, but as he continues scoring points, piles of crates begin appearing around the map, blocking off paths and limiting where you can go. Once you score all 3 points, however, and head for the exit, we managed to escape, but we're still trapped on the server. This time, however, the map loads into GM Construct of all places. Our objective is simple: find 5 gas cans scattered around the map and fuel up a jeep to escape. The only problem is that we're always being hunted by the soldier. He's always somewhere on the map, slowly stalking you through the open space. At first, he keeps his distance, but the moment he gets close, he charges at you. And he doesn't just run, he accelerates, getting faster with every second. The only way to avoid him is to stun him by calling the medic. Once you get familiar with how he works, this level becomes one of the more easier ones in the game. But after fueling up the jeep, we crash into it. But we then run out of fuel, so we have to cross this bridge by foot. Our goal here is to power up a door by activating 2 generators. Easy enough, right? Well, this entire area is packed with snipers. The moment you step into their line of sight, they start charging up a shot. If you stop moving, they'll give up, but if you continue running, they charge faster, making it really dangerous to panic and just sprint through. And it's not just one sniper watching you either. There are several positions around the map, forcing you to constantly pay attention to where you're stepping. To make things worse, you're also hunted by the Pyro. Unlike the snipers, or really other enemy as a matter of fact, the Pyro always knows where you are. They slowly move towards your position at all times, putting steady pressure on you to keep moving. On his own, he's not too difficult to outrun, but combined with the snipers, you're forced to take small, careful steps to avoid getting shot, all while knowing the pyro is getting closer with every second. The first time I played this game, I found this stage to be particularly difficult, but nowadays it's way easier than I remember. Once we escape, we end up in a strange farm, and this is where the game really ramps things up. This time our objective is to collect 5 keycards scattered around the map, each one unlocking a different door. But instead of dealing with 1 or 2 enemies like the previous levels, we're up against 3, the Scout, Medic and Demo Man. Let's start with the Scout. Despite being based on the fastest class in TF2, he's actually one of the slowest enemies in the game. Along that, he's also completely deaf, meaning he relies entirely on vision to track you. While he may sound a bit uninteresting at first glance, one thing I really like about him is his design. His wild, almost gorilla-like appearance is a huge contrast to the Scout's usual slim figure in TF2, and his jumpscare is easily one of the most disturbing in the game. Instead of screaming in your face like the others, he grabs you by the neck and starts beating you down while laughing in the background. On paper, his mechanics don't make him seem that threatening, but the real danger comes when he loses sight of you. He'll throw a loud tantrum, creating a noise that immediately alerts the medic. Once he hears anything, he'll begin running towards the source at an absurd speed. If you don't clear the area fast enough, he'll lock onto you and start chasing. Then there's the Demo Man. Unlike the other enemies, he stays planted in one location, but getting too close to him causes him to make a noise. What makes him especially frustrating in this level is his placement. He's positioned near the doors you have to unlock, so the moment you try to use a keycard, you're practically summoning the medic. All 3 enemies feed into each other, or, well, the medic, but in a really interesting way, turning what should be a simple fetch quest into a pretty stressful level. Once you finally manage to open all the gates, we end up in a strange staircase. Making our way down, we find ourselves in the server room, the final level of the game. Our goal is simple. We have to turn off all 8 servers present in the map. Sounds easy, right? Except the engineer is waiting. At first he just wanders around, but the moment you interact with the server, he'll teleport near one of these marked spots on the floor, forcing you to quickly act. Each server shut down sets him on a new patrol, so you can't just rush through. You have to move carefully, planning when to act and when to hide. But finally, after shutting down all 8 servers, we're put in a cutscene. We find the intelligence. We go ahead and grab it, but of course, the engineer isn't done. He signals us to stop, but we don't listen. We cut into the real world, where we got disconnected from a server.
Yes!
We're finally free, but as we are celebrating,
Cheers!
the mercs came to celebrate our birthday. While everyone is eating cake at the dinner table, the Heavy notices something off.
That is engineer! Oh no.
If you were playing the original version 1.0 of Capture the Intelligence, this is where the game would have ended. You'd beat these short levels and then that was it. But playing the latest build today, there's a lot more content waiting for you. Like the addition of a bonus hard mode. Hearing that, you'd probably assume it just makes enemies faster or your objective might be a little more difficult. That's definitely what I thought of at first, but hard mode is actually way more interesting than that. You start back at the very first level again, except this time, instead of dealing with just the Heavy, he's joined by the Soldier. This small change completely alters how the level plays. You can't rely on the same movement patterns you've learned previously anymore, and suddenly even the smallest of mistakes feel a lot more dangerous. But once you leave, instead of ending up in GM Construct, in reality you're in GM Big City, an entirely new map. Right away, the enemy lineup is way bigger than before. The scout, the medic, snipers are all present here, alongside a brand new foe, the civilian. He's probably one of the most annoying enemies in the entire game. He's a classic TF2 civilian model, completely covered in sticky bombs. Once he spots you, he'll start sprinting towards you at rapid speeds, and if you don't get away in time, he explodes, slowing you down and alerting every enemy nearby. After which, he'll respawn somewhere else in the map, which honestly might be the worst part about him, as he can blow up and after a few seconds come after you once again. Your objective here is still to find 5 gas cans and fuel up the jeep, but this level feels like a straight up improvement over the original version. Instead of rushing through and finishing the stage in under a minute like before, this map forces you to slow down, plan your route, and constantly stay aware of your surroundings, especially with the snipers sometimes camping near some gas cans. It's a much more methodical experience, and honestly it works really well. After fueling up the jeep, we end up inside a tunnel, more specifically the Radman's tunnel. Once again, this is an entirely original level. It's a dark, maze-like area where we need to collect 4 keycards in order to open a series of doors, all while dealing with 3 completely new enemies, the Radman, ARG Man, and Wicker Man. Let's start with the Radman. He's a thing, a partially invisible enemy that moves incredibly fast. He's extremely hard to spot, but once he sees you, he drops his disguise and immediately gives chase at insane speeds. He's actually based on a pretty obscure Easter egg from the map GM13 Hotels, where you can find a stalker NPC named the Radman hidden inside the map's secret tunnels. Apparently, this version of the character present in the game also appeared in a Gmod ARG made by the developer called Patsu82, which is a really cool bit of continuity. And speaking of ARG, next is the ARG Man. He acts more like a roadblock rather than a traditional enemy. He'll randomly appear around the map, usually in narrow hallways, blocking your path. If you collide with him, you'll get jumpscared, but won't die. Instead, he disappears, alerts every enemy of your location, and gives you this annoying screen effect. Then there's the Wicker Man. He'll sometimes appear out of bounds and start following you, passing through walls and ignoring anything in its way. He's not particularly fast, so outrunning him isn't too hard, but he has a habit of cutting you off or forcing you into bad routes if you're not paying attention. Together, these 3 enemies make the tunnel feel incredibly tense, especially since each one pressures you in a completely different way. Once we finally escape, we end up in what's probably the most interesting level in the entire game, the factory. Our objective here is to collect 25 batteries, some of them just sitting on the ground, while others are carried around by these small demo men that wander the map. At first, that sounds simple enough, until you realize that a good chunk of those batteries are blocked behind barricades. To get past them, you have to activate turrets placed around the factory, then use their homing rockets to destroy the obstacles. This already makes the level way more complex than anything before it, because now you're not just avoiding enemies, you're actively using the environment to progress. And that's where things start to get messy, because while you're doing all of this, you're being followed by the Minge. The Minge is a massive machine controlled by a brain. He's not especially fast, but once you're in his line of sight, he'll start slowing you down with his gravity gun. That alone makes moving around the factory a lot harder, especially when you're trying to line up turret shots or grab batteries. Thankfully, there is a bit of a workaround. If the Minge gets hit by one of the turret rockets, he'll be stunned for a few seconds, giving you just enough time to escape. And speaking of turrets, there's another enemy here. Henry. And I'm gonna be honest, I keep forgetting this guy exists. He's a turret robot hybrid that fires missiles once he starts chasing you. I'm not entirely sure what he's based on other than a TF2 sentry, but I guess he looks kind of cool. But then there's the Manual. You probably won't see him very often during a normal playthrough, since he likes to hang around inside these vents scattered around the factory, but when he does decide to show up, it's usually at the worst possible moment. He'll pop out of a vent randomly while you're either slowed down by the Minge, trying to activate the turret, or just walking down a hallway, adding even more pressure to an already overwhelming situation. What makes this level so interesting is how all of these elements work together. You're juggling battery collection, breaking barricades, turret placement, and 3 different enemies, all of which interfere with each other in different ways. It's chaotic, stressful, and honestly kind of overwhelming, but in a way that's pretty cool, honestly. Once we get out of the factory, however, we arrive in the laboratory, and I'm gonna be real with you, I did not enjoy playing this level. Your objective here is to activate 10 fuses scattered around this massive lab, all while being hunted by two enemies, the Engineer and Saxton Hale. The Engineer doesn't even show up right away, he only becomes active after you turn on 3 fuses. Saxton Hale, on the other hand, is always present. Most of the time he lurks inside the vents, and the moment you get too close to one, he pops out. And I need to stress this, if you're near a vent, he will pop out. It doesn't matter which one, if you hear him get inside one, he'll get out once you approach one. He's also absurdly fast, probably faster than any other enemy in the entire game. So knowing all of that, you can probably already tell why this level is so frustrating. There are vents everywhere. On top of that, certain paths are blocked by doors that only unlock after you've activated a certain amount of fuses, which means you're constantly backtracking through tight hallways filled with vents while being chased by the fastest enemy in the game. Most of the time you're not even worried about the Engineer, since he's not that fast and is honestly the least friendly thing here. What really pushed this level over the edge for me is what happens once you activate every fuse. The power shuts off. We can barely see anything, which is especially confusing considering the whole point of this level is to restore power to the building. Instead, you just made it all worse. Like, why? And on top of it all, at the last stretch, you're forced into a chase sequence with Saxton Hale through these extremely tight and hard to see tunnels. At that point, it just feels unfair. I get what this level is trying to do, but the execution makes it way more annoying than scary. But anyway, after all of that, we end up back in the server room, and almost immediately, something's off. The Engineer suddenly catches you. After which you're thrown into this strange unfamiliar level. As you run away, you eventually stumble across a gun, and for the first time in the entire game, you actually have to fight back. You're forced into a full-on boss fight against the Engineer. In his first phase, the Engineer fires these pink cube-shaped bullets that you'll need to dodge while staying on the move. Once you manage to defeat him, he transforms into the intelligence itself. This second phase ramps things up a bit, with him firing even more bullets along with homing rockets. That being said, the boss fight itself is honestly not that hard. Most of it just comes down to circling around him, dodging attacks and slowly whittling his health down until he finally goes down. Which is kinda funny when you think about it. Like, remember when this game was about like horror, dread and being powerless? Yeah, me neither. But after defeating him, we are dropped into a new cutscene. The spy stands there, staring at the intelligence. That's when this guy shows up.
I can give you notoriety. I can give you wealth.
He starts talking directly to the spy, offering him notoriety, wealth and everything he's ever wanted. But when the spy doesn't react the way he expects, the tone completely shifts. The speech turns angry, bitter, almost desperate. He starts staring the spy down, mocking his pride, his ego, and telling him that nothing he's done matters, that no one will ever remember him. Honestly, I have no idea who this guy is, and before you can even process it, the game hard cuts back to the normal world. Now we are watching the Heavy and Engineer playing what looks like to be some sort of Team Fortress 2 Smash Bros bootleg. The Heavy loses to the Engineer and completely crashes out. Then the demo man starts yelling about SPY!
Hey!
And the Heavy decides the only solution is to get the spy to beat the engineer for him. So the three of them go on a grand adventure all the way to the spy's house. Meanwhile, the spy is at home, staring at a strange picture of himself wearing a ghostly gibbous hat next to the engineer. Before we can think too much about it, he's interrupted by noise outside, and then...
What? Spy! Engineer. Yee! Yee! Yeah!
And that's where the game ends. Now, the story is honestly really strange. There are a lot of questions that just never get answered. Like, what's the deal with the engineer? He was built up as this weird final villain, and during the boss fight he definitely feels like one. But then the game ends and he's just normal again? Like nothing ever happened. And who was that guy the spy was talking to? What was he even supposed to be? Actually, taking a step back, what was going on with the server the spy joined in the first place? Why is the spy playing Team Fortress 2 as the spy? The more you think about it, the less any of it really holds together. It almost feels like the story exists more to set up cool moments than to actually make sense when you piece it all together. But to be fair, that honestly doesn't even matter. Capture the Intelligence is just a really fun game to play. The mechanics are simple but solid, the ideas are creative and generally unique, and even when the game gets frustrating, it's still incredibly memorable. And at the end of the day, that matters way more than having a perfectly explained story. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Tower Mode. Tower Mode is essentially the game's arcade mode. You're tasked with climbing through 50 floors, each one getting progressively harder, all to power up an elevator and eventually reach the top. Every floor pulls from one of around 20 different layouts, using different tile sets depending on how high up you are. Your objective is usually pretty simple. Stuff like finding 2 gas cans to power up a generator, grabbing a companion cube and placing it on a button, and a bunch more. But what really keeps things fresh is how the enemies are handled. Each floor spawns a different set of enemies, and the higher you climb, the more chaotic it gets. Early on, you might be dealing with something easy like the Heavy or Scout by themselves, but as you progress, more enemies are added into the mix, and you definitely have to be careful because if you die even once, you're sent all the way back to the first floor. That sounds brutal, but the game does throw you a small bone. Every 10 floors you're rewarded with the Dead Ringer, which gives you a single free revive, so you're constantly deciding whether to play it safe or risk pushing further. What's also really interesting is that a lot of the hard mode enemies, like the Minge, Mangle and several other creatures, actually originated in Tower Mode, before being added into the main game later on with the final 2.0 update. For such a simple game, Tower Mode ends up being a surprisingly fun and unique challenge. It adds a ton of replayability and really tests how well you understand the game's mechanics. But once you finally reach the top floor, you're rewarded with one last cutscene. The spy reaches the elevator, only to find that pressing the button doesn't work. Before he can react, he's suddenly cornered by the Heavy. When the elevator door does open, the spy doesn't hesitate and jumps straight down. We cut to someone driving. It's the spy, looking up at the tower from a distance, presumably before any of this even happened. Inside, he meets up with the engineer and hands him a ghostly gibbous as a gift. However, the engineer clearly doesn't appreciate it, immediately yelling at the spy and kicking him out. Visibly upset, the spy wanders into a bar, orders a beer and sits there, watching some weird show airing on the TV. Meanwhile, we cut back to the engineer. He's sitting alone in his couch, watching a tape from Intelligence Industries LLC. Whatever's on it clearly sets him off. He loads a shotgun and storms towards the tower, accompanied by the medic. The two of them make their way into a server room and find an intelligence sitting inside. The medic is tempted to grab it, but before he can, the engineer knocks him out, clearly wanting it for himself. Just before he gets the chance though, the heavy guns him down.
What?
Your luck runs out.
The scene abruptly cuts back to the spy. He's watching a news broadcast reporting that the tower has been destroyed. The spy looks down at the ghostly gibbous one last time, then gets into his car, presumably heading back to the tower. Now, after beating tower mode, you unlock an additional custom mode, where you can enable or disable pretty much any enemy and mess around on a set map. I'm not quite sure if it's possible to beat this with every enemy enabled at once, and even if you somehow manage to pull it off, the game doesn't really reward you with anything meaningful other than an achievement, I guess. Besides this, there are a few secrets to discover. There's a hidden interloper level referencing the ARG, a strange arcade game I'm not sure what's up with, and even a debug mode you can trigger by pressing F1.
Who knows, maybe I'll revisit this game someday. If the creator is watching this, hello! And please add a level selector. It would have made creating this video a lot easier.
But because this video is already long enough as it is, I'm going to leave the rest of the exploration up to you. The game is completely free on Windows and I'm sure you're gonna have a blast. But with that being said, it's time to end the video. Going back to what I said in the very beginning, the source engine has always felt off. Not because there's nothing there, but because of the feeling that there's always something there. Something reacting to every sound you make, something waiting for you to slip up. Games like Garry's Mod made that feeling impossible to ignore, and Team Fortress 2 was never really immune to it. Strip away the jokes, the taunts, and what's left is a world built on pressure and pursuit. Capture the Intelligence leans into that feeling, not by hiding it, but by leaning all the way into it. It even inspired people like me to create my very own personal project that also lean into this feeling. It's a game that takes what we know and turns it into something unforgettable, and honestly, that's a feeling worth chasing. I've been Willy, thanks for watching.
Alright! Bloody beaut!